We're going to begin at the beginning. Certainly there is another place to begin that is more of a beginning than the Declaration of Independence. But certainly the Declaration of Independence is a good starting point. As a document we can read together to set a context for the Constitution of the United States of America. So let's read it together, then we'll come back and focus in on some of the language I've highlighted here. The Unanimous Declaration of the 13 United States of America. When in the course of human events, it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident: that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable, than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. So looking at the beginning, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another. So they're assuming that, at some point, hey, it actually is necessary to dissolve these bands, these tethers. Looking at history, we can see sometimes it's necessary. Well, when it does become necessary, there's some important things that need to occur. In fact, that is later here, there's a requirement that these people who find it necessary to dissolve these bands, they actually have to declare not only their independence, but they should declare the causes. So let's look at the authority to which they sort of bend. They're arguing, first of all, yeah, sometimes it's necessary. Well, guess what? We think it's necessary right now. And we need to assume among the powers of the earth this separate and equal station to which the laws of Great Britain and the laws of the King of England entitle them. Like, clearly, that's not what they wrote. They said the laws of nature, natural law, and the laws of nature's God. They're appealing at this point to a higher law and to a higher ruler. And this word entitle should not be lost on you. It is a very powerful word. There is in grammar an idea of the performative constantive. That is when words do something. Now, I don't mean it in the sense of, you can say some words and it does something. It hurts someone's feelings. Certainly that's one way that words can do something. But in this case, I actually mean the words perform sort of a legal function. So if you've been to a wedding ceremony, maybe you've heard the officiant say, "I now pronounce you husband and wife. I now pronounce you husband and wife." That pronouncement, those words being spoken, actually are doing a thing. You could do this in a more simple way. I give you 2 acres of my land. Now, of course, we would want to do that in writing, but it's the language itself is sort of the doing thing. When you break a bottle, I guess, of champagne or wine or something, when you're naming a ship, I hereby name this ship Shakespeare, or whatever you're going to name it. It's that naming, right? This is when words do something. So you could argue that the Declaration of Independence, this declaration, is what creates an independent people. I'm not sure that that's the case, at least that they believe so. Certainly, if you wanted to declare your independence, you could have done it, saying, we hereby declare our independence. Done. Here they argue, it seems, that in order to be independent and to assume among these powers of the earth the separate and equal station that they're talking about, they actually have to convince other people, that is, the opinions of mankind. So think about other governments recognizing them. And so in order to do that, a decent respect to these opinions of mankind, which they're going to need to have strong opinions that they're independent, right? They're going to have to be recognized by other nations. Well, that respect requires that they should not only declare their independence, but they should declare the causes which impel them to separation. And impels is a very strong word. It sort of means forced, right? It forces them. So keep that in mind. What this document is doing is declaring the causes, not merely declaring independence. In fact, you could argue that the title itself with the signatures does that. So we hold these truths to be self-evident. What kind of truths are these? They're not the kinds of truths that have to be proven up with testimony. It's not the kinds of proof that needs to be proved up with circumstantial evidence or with mathematical proofs. We think that these, at least these people, when they say we think these are self-evident. They're evident on their face, right? These are self-evident. So look for the word that. What truths are self-evident? So I'm going to go a little over the top in my reading here. That all men are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That, to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. That, whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it. So keep in mind, they're listing it out, and that's actually a perfectly generous way to list out truths, because this word that highlights what they're talking about. So let's go back. All men are created equal. That is a self-evident truth. All human beings. Hell, today we might write all men and women are created equal. Men and women were included in the word men at this stage of English usage. I would argue this does not mean just males. Certainly not. All mankind are created equal. Also, that they are endowed not by a king, but by their Creator with rights. And some of these rights are unalienable. They cannot be separated. Certainly, you can take someone's life from them, but their right to life cannot be separated from them. Their right to life, their right to liberty, the right to pursue happiness. Now, the pursuit of happiness is a little different. You may think to yourself, I've read John Locke. This is life, liberty, and property. I see they've changed it here, but this is in the final draft. So we have these rights. Let's focus in on life. Let's focus in on liberty and this pursuit of happiness. Then again, we have another that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. So in my government class, I talk about this at length. What is a government for? I'm asking a question, and I need you to answer it in the same way you would answer the question, what is a hammer for? What is a chair for? What is a dog for? What is a man for? What is a woman for? What is a human for? What is our aim? At some point, it becomes a little bit different kind of a question, what is a human for? But I think that's Aristotle's question in his Nicomachean or Nicomachean Ethics. He wants to know what our purpose as humans are. So what is a hammer for? What's its function? What's its aim? What's it designed to do? Is helpful because it helps us answer the good, the better, and the best when we're trying to differentiate whether or not a hammer is a good hammer. If we have two hammers, which of the two hammers is better? If we have three hammers, which of the three hammers is the best? It's the stative good, the comparative, this one is better than that one. And then if you have three or more, which one of these three or more is the best? So the stative, the comparative, and the superlative. So if I asked you that question, what is government for? It's not just a philosophical question. It also helps us understand when we're evaluating whether or not a government is good. If we're evaluating two forms of government, which one is better? And if we're evaluating at least three forms of government, of the three or more, which one is best? So this is actually very important. Here's their answer. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. That's what governments are for. Governments are to secure the right to life, the right to liberty, and the right to pursue happiness. So that's what governments are there. They're there to secure. So think about guarding. So you can picture a Marine, or you can picture a Navy SEAL. We can go with Navy SEAL. Think of a Navy SEAL, figuratively, standing guard, securing these rights that are in another room. People try to get in to destroy these rights. The Navy SEAL takes them out. The Navy SEAL, the government, is there to secure these rights. That's what the government is for. What happens when the Navy SEAL turns out to be a bad guy and turns on the ones he is supposed to protect? Whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, right? What happens? Well, then it's the right of the people to change it, to alter the form of government, or in some cases to abolish it, and then in its place to institute a new government. Why? Well, because that's the purpose of government, to secure these rights. Moving on, prudence, wisdom, indeed. This is emphasis, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. Not every nitpicky problem you have means you need to overthrow the government. Of course, especially when they're long established, like England. But sometimes, in the course of human events, it becomes necessary. Here's one of those times. When a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces, now this is important, a design, like the whole form of government is essentially evinces this design to reduce the people under absolute despotism. It's their right and it's their duty. Now that's emphasis too. Think about this if you're reading it or someone's reading it out loud. It is their right. It is their duty. So not just their right to do so, they actually have to. It's their duty as human beings to overthrow, to throw off this government, and to provide new guards for their future security. So when I talk about this Navy SEAL or this Marine you're picturing, I get it from the language of the text here. We want to provide new guards to secure these rights. So I hope that you spend some time as you read through the rest of this. And there's a couple of other things I want to point out, but I actually want you to think about this. I want you to think hard about this language. It's not a whole lot of words I want you to focus on, but they're important. They're important, and they provide a framework for understanding, at least in part, what the Constitution is going to do. Also, if you will, when you're looking at this, look at some of these. They also, just so you know, they talk about using the laws of England to try to redress, right? They try to petition. Right? But instead of getting a good answer, they get injury, right? They also talk about appealing to their countrymen, right? And they're getting a deaf ear there too. But think about, this is what he has done. Look at this language. The King of Great Britain refused, forbidden, refused. He's called, look at the language here, he's dissolved, he's refused, he's endeavored to prevent, he's obstructed, he has made judges dependent on his will, he's erected a multitude of new offices, affected to render the military independent. These are the things that he has done. Here's the language you can also look at. In every stage, we have petitioned for redress in the most humble terms. Our repeated petitions have been answered only by repeated injury. And then also, we have tried to warn our British brethren, also finding they too have been deaf to the voice of justice and to consanguinity. We must therefore acquiesce, and then here we go back to the necessity which denounces our separation, and hold them, as we hold the rest of mankind, enemies in war and in peace, friends. And so this is, we solemnly publish and declare, this is the performative constitutive maybe, that these united colonies are, and of right ought to be, free and independent states. And then this is the other thing that they're trying to do, absolve from all allegiance to the British Crown, and then all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right do. Interesting. So what is a government for? Is to secure these rights. How do governments do that? Maybe this is an indication. Maybe we will see some of this in the Constitution.